This week, I am really delighted to say that we have joining us for our Cool Tools Show and Share, Austin Kleon. And Austin, would you mind introducing yourselves to our listeners, watchers?
Yeah, so I'm primarily known as an author now. I describe myself as a writer who draws. So I make books with pictures and art with words in them. The book that people probably know me for the best is this book called Steal Like an Artist. And I've done a few other books, but this is the one people kind of know me for.
Well, it's a real delight to have you. We've had you before on our podcast, and your tools are always interesting, refreshing, and I'm looking forward to what you have to share with us this week. So we're now in the video format, and we're going to actually have a show and tell, so we'll be able to show some of your tools. What's your first and favorite and most best of all tool?
Well, the tool I'm really obsessed with right now, and I'm going to try to show you my desktop, so hopefully this works here. I have Pentel, I think it's Pentel, yes. Pentel makes these brush pens that I am crazy about, and I'll show you what they're made of here. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Yes. And how these come stock is I'll just open this package. I have like about 1 million of these. Whenever I don't know if you do this, Kevin, but whenever I recommend tools, I always stock up on them before I recommend them, because
they're sold out.
I've had stuff go out of stock. Like if I put something on my newsletter, I've had it literally go out of stock on me, and then I can't use it anymore. So let me just open up one of these and show you what it's like, because it'll give you an idea of the weird thing that I do to them. What they do is they come with, it's just kind of like a fountain pen, really. It comes with 2 cartridges. And if you take the cap off, there's a nice, it's probably even hard to see, there's a nice white brush tip on there. And if you unscrew it, it's just, you put the cartridge on here, and then you get a nice black brush pen. Cartoonists love these. This is sort of what it looks like when you have the black ink cartridge in it. So you can, it's just like it gets a real nice kind of cartoonist,
right?
Line like that. Just like a brush pen. What I do with my brush pens that I just discovered in about the past couple of months is I have a set of, if there are any printmaking or artsy people watching, they're CMYK brush pens. So what they are is I've modded these to do color. So I have a magenta one that looks like this. And then I have a yellow one that looks like this. And I have a blue one that looks like this. And I could show people how I actually do this. What I do is I take a new pen and I use one of these black ink cartridges in another black, because I have the black one here. I'll use this up and then I'll clean it out and like empty, I'll like run it under the faucet and then like dry it. And then I'll get ink from the art supply store. And then my hack is a dull syringe. Syringes are kind of hard to find, like just at like a drugstore. I don't know, especially in an urban area, I think because of drug use and stuff. So I order these online, but these are just blunt tip syringes. So then what I do is you could tell that this one's yellow.
Right.
So when this is getting low, then you can see like this one's pretty low here. I pull this out and then I take the ink, shake it up. Hopefully you can see it. Is this coming off okay?
Oh yeah. It looks great.
Cool. And then try not to make too big of a mess, but I just like stick the I use the syringe
Right.
and I get a little bit of ink in there like that, and then I just
Right.
stick it in this cartridge.
So,
And fill it up.
so are you saying that they actually don't make colors? They only make it in black?
So
They
they
haven't.
don't make this particular kind of brush pen that I love. They
Huh.
don't make this kind in different colors. Pentel does do some colored brush pens,
Yeah.
but I just order these things in bulk. And I just decided to make my own because I just decided this was like, yeah, you'll probably get some people like, why doesn't he buy regular brush pens? But there's something about this particular pen. I just love the style so much, or the feel. And I can actually show you what it looks like when I've got my diary here behind me. So I can actually open up my diary and show you. Let's see here. So this is usually how I'll use it. I like to draw cartoons of my kids, sometimes diary, so you can see how I'm using the different layers of the ink pen. I'll do yellow first because that's the lightest color, and then I'll come in with like different color. I'll like lay it out with yellow, and then I'll layer it up from there.
Right.
That's something I stole from Art Spiegelman. Works that way. That's how he
Also,
does his stuff.
Linda Barry has a couple of exercises using 3-color
Yes.
um, overlays.
And Linda is who I stole the whole concept of writing with a brush from, because one of the things that Linda teaches is that by slowing down and really paying attention to your letter forms, that's sort of like that's your left hemisphere, right? That's like your laser brained, like that's your laser focused left hemisphere. You give that hemisphere something to do, and then it frees up the right hemisphere to kind of bring stuff to you as you're writing. And that's what I learned from Linda. So that's my weird first tool. That's pretty nerdy right out of the box. So
Well, that's a great it's a tool plus a hack.
yes, exactly. A tool plus a hack.
And the thing about these Pentel brush pens is that, unlike, I say, a calligraphy brush, you can carry it in your pocket and it won't leak.
Yeah, so it has like a cap, and it also keeps the ink from drying out.
Right.
So I'll almost make my I'm hesitant to open my diary because I never know what I'm actually going to open the page to on screen. But I'll almost treat the diary as like, there are certain like editions of the Bible that have like Jesus's words are in red or something like that. I grew up with that kind of thing. So sometimes I'll use sometimes what I do, like I'll use the colored ink pens with
Right.
and then sometimes I make like I make maps and stuff, my bike rides and stuff like that. So yeah, so these have really freed me up, and I have a lot of fun with them. And the other weird thing so I've always been kind of a art supply hoarder. I think it comes from years of like just being a kid, not having a lot of stuff, right? Like just not having a lot of money to buy good supplies and stuff. And now I still have that in me. So it's like having the big things of ink. I feel like I use it now. You know what I mean? So I don't feel wasteful about using up a bunch of the cartridges.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to refill it. So there's something about having that refillable ink that like, I work a lot more because I'm not worried about like using up art supplies.
And you're using just regular Higgins pen ink, I guess.
Yeah. So I use this Higgins stuff for the magenta and this
Cyan.
Higgins stuff is like, it's lemon, actually. It's like super like bright. And for the blue, I actually found this Lamy fountain pen ink that I really like. It's kind of more watery than that other stuff. And I like how watery it is. it kind of lays on the page a little bit
I see.
like
Okay.
nicer. It doesn't like bleed and get bloppy.
Okay.
I don't know if that's not a word, but so,
Because I have, I did a kind of a hack to my inkjet printer where we had bulk ink on the
yeah,
side.
yeah.
That ink is incredible.
Is it a lot better than the cartridges?
Well, a lot better, meaning like it's indelible. I mean, it's like it will, it's super, super dense ink because it's,
Cool.
it's inkjet. They're just little bits of it.
Yeah.
And we have big bottles of it in bulk. I don't know if I even dared put it in a pen because if it ever leaked, you would never get it out.
I had seen people like use syringes with like printer cartridges before. So I think that's what kind of seeded the idea in my brain to use the syringes. But the syringes are key because trying to fill those cartridges otherwise it's like it's going to be all over I work at the kitchen table a lot, so I try not to make too much of a mess.
I don't know if you're going to get into some of the other tools, but I was wondering maybe if you have a chance to share how you do your collages and if you have technologies that you use for that.
Oh yeah, people ask me about these a lot. Let me see if I can find
whether you use you're taping it or something.
Yeah. So like, let me find one that I can show people. Yeah. So this is like, let me pull up, if you don't mind, I'll pull up the screen again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't share too much of this technique because I'm worried that I'll spook it. And but I'll give you a hint with these. First of all, I'll just pull the page. This is literally transparent tape and magazines, and it's just lifting images out of magazines,
like we used to do with Silly Putty.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It depends on the magazine, but there are certain magazines that are printed on really cheap paper, and there's a drawing with
the,
and the other things I do is I do these I've been doing these word collages, and I do the same thing with those. I lift type right out of magazines, so when I see it reminds me of like some really great letterpress work that the posters that I really like. There's a guy named Amos Kennedy that I really like his stuff, and this is just my attempt to try to do that. But yeah, it's literally just transparent tape.
Yeah. That's cool.
And often using like other materials. Like I did this one the other day, and this is literally just a bunch of
ticket stubs.
Yeah, it's just ticket stubs I actually found in the dumpster outside of my kids' elementary school. Because it's end of school, so everyone's throwing everything out. Like all the teachers are throwing things out. So I found all these tickets and then I made this collage out of it. So it's kind of a combination of like scrap paper and then lifting stuff out of magazines.
That's really cool. I wanted to just grab something here. I did a little collage out of movie stub tickets.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
I just love the colors.
That. Yeah.
So, when I was in Athens, I was in Athens, Georgia during this time. And I just love the colors, those old colors.
Yeah. I feel like collage does like a couple of things for me. And I've loved seeing your daily art projects. I love that so much. But the thing that collage does for me is like, one, it sort of is a way to, I'm kind of a hoarder and a collector. And so it's kind of a way to take I hate throwing things out. So it's kind of a way to take scraps and byproduct stuff and a way to save it.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect of it. Like I like to collage my kids' homework. My kids come home with these goofy like worksheets, the same kind of worksheets that like I had to do in school. Like it really hasn't changed that much in school. So they bring these worksheets home, but I love like one of the worksheets that my son brought home was called like heart work or something. It was something about like the heart, and I just thought it was so poetic. So I cut it up and I paste it in my notebook, and then I draw around it and like make my own piece out of it. But collage is also where I go when I don't have any ideas. Like when I really don't know what to do and I don't feel like drawing and I don't feel like writing, collage is always there for me because it's the most like direct. You just gluing things to the page. And that's another thing I learned from Linda, Linda Berry that we brought up earlier. She says like, when we don't know what to do, you start gluing things to a page. It's like things emerge, and so that collage, and it's been interesting. I know a lot of people who have turned to collage during the pandemic. Like it's just one of those, it's one of those art forms. It's really hard to be bad at it. Like it's hard to make a bad collage in a lot of ways. So, but it's really become like pretty central to my practice these days. And I feel like I'm creating a body of work that's so different than what I've done before, because most people know me from my Newspaper Blackout poems, which look like if the CIA did haiku. And then they know me from the books, which are all like black and white and the drawing. So I'm creating this new body of work that really doesn't look like anything I've done before. And that can be kind of like, it's interesting as someone who has an audience for something else to do work that's just so different and watch people not know how to process it.
Right.
But that's exciting. That I feel like you really have to push yourself and have side projects to keep yourself from that Hitchcock said that style is self-plagiarism. But it's like you want to push beyond style. That was something in your pieces of advice that I loved is, copying others is a great way to start, but it's a terrible way, but copying yourself is a terrible way to end. Right. That was like one of my favorites. And it just felt so, so I'm working on a project right now where I'm working on a new project where I'm sort of presenting art as a series of tensions that are unresolvable instead of like, cause I'm very interested in this idea of tensions and Heraclitus's idea of the harmony of opposites. And I really feel like that tension of the known and the unknown, what you know and what you don't know, like so much of the good work comes out of that,
Yeah.
And if you let yourself be like too pulled towards the known and repetition and repeating yourself, you're not going to get that good stuff that comes from the unknown.
Absolutely.
So it's like this constant, it's that constant tension in a creative life of keeping the lights on with work that is maybe sellable or presentable, but also pushing yourself to that new thing that they're going to want later, or you're going to try to get them to want.
Right. Well, I mean, there is actually a study of this tension between exploiting what works, and exploring what is unknown, and that if you economically, it makes sense to kind of exploit what you works and you have an income for versus going where it's unknown and unprofitable. And there actually is a study on that ratio, which is it's actually 1 to 3.
So it should be. Tell me more.
Well, it's like it's no more than 2/3 of exploiting to 1/3 exploring.
That seems right to me. Like you would, and I'm interested in this idea of ratio because, I'm really glad you brought that up because that's going to go on my list of tensions. I think it was actually Alison Gopnik that introduced me to that idea. She writes so well about kids, and I find so many things that she writes about with parenting really apply to me as an artist. And so I'm always trying to tell people that it's like, people are like, well, how do you balance art and parenting? And it's like, well, actually it's kind of the same. You're trying to create like, but, that's so, I'm so interested in ratios. Cause like when I was younger, I thought it was the ratio of making to consuming was actually flipped in my mind. I thought that you had to work all day like I thought writers wrote all day and then they might read like for an hour. And then I realized like, no, actually it's more like writing for like Stephen King, like writing in the morning and then reading all afternoon.
Right.
The ratio of input has to be like multiples of what your actual output is.
Sure. Yeah.
That took me a long time as a young person to figure that out.
Right. Yeah. And also the ratio of rest or slack to efficiency or productivity is it's not 100%. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. That's you're going to nosedive into the ground at 100%, but that ratio of how much time you take off and don't work at all versus working is another interesting ratio.
It's another tension too.
Yeah. Another tension. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, let's take your second tool, that you want to share with us.
So people get nostalgic I'm going to share my screen again. Yeah. So if you watch like a lot of my sketchbook page, I post a lot of my diary. It's really a diary. It's not really a sketchbook in that I'm not working. I mean, I work things out in it, but it's more like just a diary that's like an illustrated diary. You'll see a lot of date stamps in there, and people are very it's funny, people, it's that old joke where it's like you're trying to like present your art and someone's like, wow, what frame did you use for this? Like, oh, I'll post a page for my diary and people are like, where'd you get your date stamp? So I have a librarian background, which I think is where some of this comes from. So like when I was working in the public library, there were lots of date stamps laying around like this.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always joke with people is like, you could go to any office supply store right now and buy one of these. These are not like obscure.
They're not antiques.
They're not antiques. They still sell them. So I have a bunch. Like this is kind of like an old one that I probably stole from like an office.
Yeah.
And this is very like this says office. I'm sure I got this at Office Depot, obviously.
Yeah.
And these are the kind that you just have like a stamp pad,
right.
And then you just, you have to do the ones I really like are self-inking. Because it just like takes a step out. So I used this one for a long time. This is just like a Mizayo, and it just has I think you could probably get one of those stamp rollers and reuse these, but they're just stamp pads that like fit in there and then just stamp it. And this is actually what I bring to book signings now because it's like really portable. And so I always like stamp the date in the book when I sign for people. And it's like,
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic.
The most extreme version of that I ever saw is Robin Sloan when he was on tour for, I think it was Sourdough, his book Sourdough. He had a custom stamp where he would enter the longitude and latitude of the location. That was the nerdiest thing I'd ever seen, but it was very cool. I have a picture of him doing that. But my baby is this bad boy, the Trodat Professional 5030. This is like industrial. This was $20. Like you can get this on like Amazon or wherever, but this is like a big, chunky, badass date stamp. I love that. This is like big as your face, It's like, but I love this thing. There is nothing more satisfying than just a chunk, So those are my date stamps. And I don't really know, like it's almost like they're one of those tools that it's like, does this really I mean, it is a tool. How useful it is questionable. I mean, it's not like it's really that much of a labor saving device, but I do find that I'm always on the lookout for like physical, visceral things that I can inject into my process that give me a sense of doing something, right? So much of what we do is just in our head so much.
Right.
I like finishing a page of writing and then taking the Trodat,
Right.
Bam, okay, there's a page. And so there is something about, I'm a big fan of like goofy rituals. I think we talked about this before, just like any silly ritual that you can kind of like bring into your workflow, and like it just makes things tangible. I'm just obsessed with, and that's another thing I learned from Linda. I mean, I could write books. I mean, I do write books full of stuff I learned from Linda, but like that's another thing I learned from Linda, is just like bringing the physical into. She was able to talk about bringing the body and a sense of physicality into writing and cartooning in a way that I'd never heard anyone talk about.
Sure. Yeah. You were talking before about if you get stuck in her advice. The other bit of advice that I use all the time is if you get stuck, just make a scribble.
Yes.
Start with a scribble.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's just magic.
I have a friend who does scribble birds.
Yeah.
You make a scribble and then you just add a head and some feet. And all of a sudden but that's that's Leonardo da Vinci. He'd tell you, oh, well, if you knew an idea for a form, just look at stains on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a great way to, that first mark, I think is, my son said something beautiful to my wife the other day, and I would love to write a whole book with this title. He said, "Oh, you're almost a beginner." I was like, that's it. Actually, almost that first mark, it's like people, there's I'm going to forget who said it. But there's this gap between doing nothing and doing something. Right. That's the thing to get over. Right.
Right.
It's the beginning, that first mark,
right.
And I think that's what I like about collage too, is that you just get some weird thing and glue it to the middle of the page.
Right.
And then you can start from that. It's like a seed, It's
right. Exactly. So have you gotten into rubber stamps? Because rubber stamps have some of that analog, visceral, sensual feel. It's a little bit like collage. And like even Saul Steinberg was a huge rubber stamp guy in many ways. I'm surprised you haven't gotten, do you have your box of rubber stamps yet?
I have some stamps. I was saving them for the kids, but I really should just use them myself. It's funny that the minute you said stamp, I was going to talk about Steinberg, because he's probably another, absolute hero of mine. I am actually, and we can talk about him. I found out he was a cyclist the other day, which I'm very excited about. He's Romanian, and that's part of my background.
Yeah.
So what was interesting is when I got started, I met Linda Berry, a guy named Dan Shawn, who's a great fiction writer. He has a new book out actually called Sleepwalk, that's getting amazing reviews. When we were living in Cleveland, Dan was really, really kind to me and invited me to see Linda speak. And then he invited us out to have drinks with her after the talk. And I swear I've run my career off of a lot of those fumes, just being around Linda, getting to know her worldview, getting introduced to her work. But the other thing that happened to me is right after I met Linda, my wife and my girlfriend and I got married, and we're still married. Yeah. But on our honeymoon, we saw a Saul Steinberg show at the Morgan in Manhattan. That's what we did on our honeymoon. We went to Manhattan because we got married December 30th. And so we went to where can we go that's not too far away? We were living in Cleveland. And so we went to New York, and I saw this Saul Steinberg show. And I think it was like that, a lot of life is like, I feel like a lot of things, it's like triangulation, it's like there's 2 or 3 things that just create this field in which you see all this possibility, and I think meeting Linda and then getting introduced to Saul Steinberg and really diving into his work and seeing it in person, that just unlocked something in me to where I was like, pictures and words together. This is what I want to dedicate myself to, and that just I've been interested. Sometimes people talk about my books and they say, oh, you gave me permission to work this certain way. And I always kind of itched against that word permission, because I was like, I'm not a teacher handing out bathroom passes. Like, I don't know what we're talking, like permission. But then I thought about it, and there were times in my life where there were these artists whose work gave me permission to do my work. So Linda Berry gave me permission. Saul Steinberg gave me permission. Nina Cacciadorian gave me permission. Wayne White gives me permission. You know, this idea that we come to our gifts through the gifts of others, you know.
Right.
And they blow open possibilities for us.
Yeah.
You know, so
for me, it was Paul Klee.
Yeah, that's a guy that I should know better. And
Yeah.
I'm like aware of his work and I should know better, but I still haven't like done a deep dive.
He did a little really curious, weird book about the kind of the primitive, essential elements of his symbolism. I mean, it's kind of really strange.
Interesting.
I know. It was like
I don't know this one.
Yeah, I should dig up the title of it, because it's not known. It's not his artwork. It was like a series of lectures that he did trying to uncover the primitive kind of like elemental symbols that you would, out of which all art would come. It was kind of a strange idea, but it was really.
It wasn't his pedagogical sketchbook, was it?
It might have been.
Okay. Well, we're going to figure that out. We'll find that in the show notes, as they do these days. I would love to read that. I'm extremely interested in that idea. I have a couple of books around here that have been really influential on me. There's an Italian designer named Bruno Munari. I don't know if you know his stuff. No, I don't know that one. But he did some really beautiful books where he did a book about the circle, did a book about the triangle, and a book about the square. And there's another woman whose work she's pretty obscure. Her name's Sylvia Fine, but she was a surrealist painter. She still is. I think she's 101. She's still in like the Bay Area. And she quit painting to raise her daughter, Heidi. And she wrote these two amazing books that nobody knows about, but have been really, really influential on me. One of them is called Heidi's Horse, which is what she did is she raised Heidi on a horse ranch, and they're drawings of horses from the time Heidi was like 2 to the time that she was like 18. And so the whole book is just the progression of Heidi's horses. Wow. And I love this book, and I think it's out of print. But the other book that Sylvia Fine did is called First Drawings. And what she does is she traces the kind of progression of primitive art and the shapes. And her thesis is that children actually develop marks the same way that we have developed them as a culture. Right. So it's kind of this far out idea that it's one of those things where I don't even care if it's true, because it's such it's such an interesting way of thinking about it. But just it caused me, I think all great art and all great books, they just cause you to pay different kinds of attention. And it's caused me to pay attention to my kids' drawings in a way that I don't think I would have otherwise. But I love those books. Yeah, that's really great. So this cover a third tool. I'm thinking about how I'm going to do that. I think I can actually make this work on the document camera. So what I'm going to do, what I have only just discovered this tool recently. I think it's a new addition to the iPhone iOS. I've had some people tell me that it's been on Android for a while. It's iOS's live text function. And this has blown my mind, because I'm a guy who reads a lot of books and is always wanting to copy things out of books. So I'm going to be self-promotional, and I'm going to use one of my own books here. So let's share the screen. I'll show you what this is. All right. So if I open this there's so many pictures in my books, it's going to be hard to find like an actual text page. Okay. So I'm going to put it on this page of text. If you're in iOS, let me see if I can get the camera to pick up this might be kind of hard to show. I think actually yeah, okay, now you can see. Do you see these little bars that are coming
Yeah.
down?
Yeah.
So if you, actually, I'm just going to take the picture. I'm going to take a picture of the text, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. So this thing shows up. What this does is it makes the picture of the text selectable. And so you can select this whole page's text,
Right.
hit copy, and then open your notes app up, hit paste, and it's in there. You might have to like edit it a little bit.
Right.
But like then you have the text.
Right.
And this live text thing, man, I have some fun with this. The other thing that blew my mind, and we'll see if this actually works. So I'm going to open my diary, which is, of course, all handwritten. And sure, lo and behold, like this really freaked me out. So I'm going to take a picture of this handwriting from this morning. I'm going to pull that up. And this usually works. Yeah, see? It actually recognizes my weird handwriting. Let's see. If it, of course, I said it was going to do that, and now it won't do it. Where'd it go? Yeah, see how that's highlighting? I don't know if you could see that. So it's highlighting my handwritten stuff.
Wow.
So copy it. Go over to the notes app. Let's paste it. Yeah, so
wow.
It's in there. I mean, it's not perfect.
Right.
But it's really, I mean, it's only going to get better, you know? So I'm just really that live text thing. I've had a lot of fun with it. And it also works in Safari. So if you pull things up in Safari, you can kind of like highlight text and pictures.
Right.
I'm sure it can be used for all sorts of nefarious surveillance purposes.
But it's great for making a common book if you're reading and you want to dog ear or a little page and put a note in. It's just fabulous for that.
I use it with library books a lot.
Right.
So yeah, and this is built into iOS now. So like you don't really, I think you just have to have like the latest operating system or recent. But I've had some Android people tell me it's been on there for a long time, that it's been able to do that. I just remember the day. I mean, I know you do. It's like, I just remember when OCR wasn't very good.
Right. Right.
I was like, but live text has blown my mind, but it's really reading library books because I'm such an underliner. And, like being able to just like highlight the text and dump it in a Word doc, that's been awesome.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a great tool. So Austin, your fourth one, what's your fourth cool tool?
So my fourth cool tool is probably, it could be, to me, it's my favorite, most interesting tool right now, but it might be boring to other people. It's my bicycle. I bought a bicycle 3 or 4 months ago, and I have gone completely nuts for bicycling. Did you
not have a bicycle before that?
So let me give you a little bit of background. I grew up in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio. And so we lived on a little acre plot, and behind us was a cornfield. And then we had a country road running in front of the house where people would drive 60 miles an hour in a big pickup truck. So like if I wanted to ride somewhere, like there's a good chance I was going to get hit by a car. So like I didn't really have anywhere to ride a bicycle. So I had a bicycle, but there wasn't anything, I'd have to like ride it up and down the short driveway. So I never really had a place to ride a bike. So I knew how to ride a bike, but I didn't have one. I was behind the curve in the sense that I didn't buy a bicycle right after the pandemic hit, because I know a lot of people bought bikes right after the pandemic hit because it was a good way to get around and not have to take public transportation and stuff. But I bought this bike. There's a bike shop right down the street from me here in Austin, because I live in Austin, Texas. And I went with my friend Christy, who's like a real avid cyclist, and I picked out this bike, just a pretty basic, like 7-speed street bike. And what happened was I made friends with my 74-year-old neighbor. who's lived here forever and has biked, for 40 years, 50 years, whatever. He takes me out twice a week in the morning. So we ride on Wednesday and we ride on Sunday mornings. And I mean, this cat, it's like Fight Club, because the first day of Fight Club, your ass is a wad of cookie dough. I mean, it really is. It's incredible to me, but I have gone nuts for biking because it's done so many different things. I mean, it's the fervor of a convert right now. Like I really have the fervor of a convert. One of the things it's done for me is Austin is a very outdoorsy city, which never made any sense to me because it's so damn hot here all year. But biking has kind of opened the city up to me. And really, we also have terrible traffic and everyone drives a 2-ton truck. And I mean, it's very or a Tesla or with California plates. So it's like, this is having the bike has opened the city and the neighborhood up to me in these really wonderful ways.
Yeah.
Clive Thompson wrote a really nice piece about how and I think a lot of cyclists know this, biking sort of in between walking and driving.
Yeah.
So it's this really nice cross mix of you're seeing a lot of things, but you're seeing them at a pace where you can actually process them. Yep. So I love that about it. The other thing that's happened is I've always been what I consider an indoorsman. So I've always been an indoor guy, not super physical, never really played a lot of sports and stuff. And biking has put me in my body in a way that I don't think I ever have been before. Right. So, and the bicycle, I was like, how are you going to make this bicycle thing fit with your other interests? But it's so interesting to me because the bicycle is really an example of how man and machine can emerge to make this other thing. And so I think it's a really interesting way to think about technology because it's just such a perfect piece of technology for me.
It is. It's actually one of the most efficient transportations of any in the world, except for ice skating.
Yeah.
And a man or a human on a bicycle is incredibly efficient. If you think about that, you have basically a quarter horsepower powering this thing.
Yeah.
60 watt, whatever it is. It's an amazingly efficient machine. And if you put it in low gear, hills don't really, you go up the hills. Yeah. So here's something that will I think transform your life is bicycle touring.
Okay.
It is the best. And in terms of America, it's the only way to see America is on a bike.
Okay.
And cars are, too fast. You don't see much. Walking, you'll just never get there. But a bicycle is exactly the right speed to see America. And there is a whole network, adventure cycling, of designed trails, courses. They are on back roads, and that keep you off the highway and still going in the right direction. So you can see fantastic. And there are about maybe a dozen long-term bike trails, usually abandoned railways or towpaths, where you can go hundreds of miles with not being on the street.
Wow.
And so you can ride from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. on a towpath. Wow. You can go from Buffalo to Albany on the Erie Canal towpath. And if you have a nice set of bags, you're camping for free just about, and you have the only expenses food. And it's the best, cheapest way to see America. I've ridden across the U.S. twice, from San Francisco to New York and from Vancouver to Canada. And I did it with my son. And it's also the best family thing you can do. So your kids, I've met a lot of families biking, and it's very doable. You have to be the right age, of course.
Right. But
it's not difficult to do, and it's really fun, and you get to see the real stuff going on. And here's the last thing. You'll be heroes if you're doing a bike tour. So what I did is I put a little sign inside the triangle that had a map of where I was. And every time I stop at a grocery store to get something to eat, I'd come out and there are people saying, wait a minute, you rode from there to here? And they want to hear the story and they want you to take you home, whatever it is.
Right.
And so if you're bike touring, you're the hero. You're not just another person in the car.
Yeah.
It is the best way to meet people. So I could go on and about this, but this is the next step in your transition.
Yes.
Is to bike tour with your family or your sons or your daughters, whoever it is.
Yeah.
It is the best thing in the world.
Well, you've given me so much hope because, like, I have 2 boys and they're 9 and 7, and they think I'm the dumbest, goofiest dork for riding my bicycle. And I'm trying to play it cool because I know the more like you come at it directly,
right,
fail. But I'm like, part of the reason we live where we live in Austin is that if they have a bicycle, they can literally do whatever they want. I mean, they can go anywhere in the city worth going. And I am, that gives me so much hope for the future. Cause if I can just get them bike, I bought my wife a bike the other day cause I'm going to try to hook her. But that is beautiful. And I just really, it was walking before this. Before it was walking, and I was just about walking.
Biking is the way to see things. Really is. So and also for your wife, depending on where you are, another step is an e-bike or pedal assist bike, which sometimes for some people is just enough. You want a low power thing. It's just enough to get over that kind of sweaty state that you don't want to arrive in. That's another level. But
they had a Linus half off down the street, and I was this close with the e-bike, and I was like, no, I could buy 2 or 3 bikes for this, but
yeah. Well, here's what it is. When you go on vacation, rent some e-bikes.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, that's another great way to try things out and to see things is go somewhere and rent an e-bike and do the tour on an e-bike. That's another way to kind of try these things out.
But one of the things you brought up is having good bags.
Yes.
That was something that Clive got me into because he was like, look, if you can get some good panniers, like this is all of a sudden you could shop, you can stop at the library, you can go to the bookstore.
Right.
So like the minute I put a $40-$50 REI rack on the back of that mother and then got these saddlebags, it's like, okay, now we're really having fun.
Yeah. I was 35 before I had a car. I just lived on a bicycle.
Yeah.
I had a mail order company where every day I would load my back of my bicycles with packages and I'd ride to the post office to mail them. So cargo bikes. So
my buddy Hank, who I ride with, who's he's probably 4 or 5 years older than you.
Yeah.
He told me the same thing. He's like, I didn't even have a truck until I became a house painter.
Yeah.
He's like, that's how I used to get around Austin was biking.
Yeah.
So
it's really, bikes are really great. I'm glad you have one. So I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking about something you're excited by these days, your latest project. I know you have a new edition of your book, maybe other things. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, the thing I'd love people to know about is the 10th anniversary of Steal Like an Artist. It's out right now. This is the first time in hardback. And it's a little bit bigger than the paperback. We which is fun. It's got new end papers. It's got a fancy little ribbon in it. And there's a new afterword, by me in the back. So that's it. This is like a great graduation gift. You stick a envelope of money and Steal Like an Artist. That's a good thing. I love my newsletter.
And I highly recommend your newsletter, which is free, but not cheap.
Yes. And I have introduced a paid tier now. So if people want to hear from me another, twice a week, we're doing that. And the thing that's been so much fun for me about that is that community that's forming in the comments feels like what the internet used to feel like to me. It's a bunch of people that kind of care about the same thing and they're kind of invested. They pay money to read it. And I've been really impressed by how helpful people are with each other, because sometimes we'll have open threads and I'll encourage people like, hey, if you got a question, I might be able to answer it, but all these people that read might be able to answer it too. So the community there is really interesting to me. That's kind of a surprise for me because I'm kind of alone. I love people. I love being around people. I'm very extroverted, but I do feel like a loner a lot of the time. And so that's been really fun. The other thing I'm really excited about is I was going to do a book about having kids and making art. And I avoided that for years and dreaded it. And I've kind of like put that off to the side finally. And now I have like 3 books that I'm ready to write, which has never happened to me before.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have like the next 2 to 3 to 4 years mapped out in my head. I mean, we'll see if it actually goes that way. So what I'm really excited about is that the codex remains a technology that is still kicking. And I love in my books how you can read these in ebook for sure.
Yeah.
And I certainly make more money if you buy them in ebook, which is kind of funny. But we're really trying to take advantage of the book.
Yeah.
That's something that I really like to do. And when I started my career 12 years ago in publishing, I just assumed that this was the end. This is the last opportunity I'm going to have to do paper books. And it's been amazing how they've like held out as a
they're not going to go obsolete.
So it's a technology that works and that people love. And talk about a self-powered technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my theory of writing and books is really that the author making a book is like embodied energy, right? It's like you stick, it's in the pages, but it's inert until the reader brings their energies, cracks it open and makes it come alive.
Well, Austin, thank you so much. This has really been a delight as usual. Really appreciate all your picks. Thanks for joining us in Cool Tools, and best of success on your future books.
Thanks so much for having me.
We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's 1 page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1 M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they're also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We will respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. Thank you to this week's patrons, who include John Omer, Andrew Smith, Tom Hanks, Michael Brisson, Steve Golden, Nick Gray, Cindy Sherman, Thomas Off, Rel Deshaw, and Sean Living. Thank you all.